Good evening and welcome to the News Roundup for Wednesday, January 11, 2023. I am Abigail Smythe. Among the stories in this evening's newscast, CEO of Child Protection and Family Services Agency asked to step down from her position. Feelings of discomfort resurrect about the secrecy of convicted felons archived under sex offenders registry. Shortage of jurors in the court system causing delays in cases. Government blaming opposition for holding up process to move Jamaica to republic status. Draft regulations for national identification system tabled in the House of Representatives. In business, World Bank warns that global economy will come perilously close to a recession. In the region, kilos of explosives found buried along road leading to the home of Colombia's vice president. On the international scene, Chinese government suspends issuing tourist and business visas for South Koreans and Japanese in apparent retaliation for COVID-19 testing requirements. And in sports, Jamaica Football Federation halts plan to start Jamaica Women's Premier League Tier 2 competition. Now for the news in detail. Chief Executive Officer of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, Rosalie Gage-Gray, has been asked to step down from her position. This follows the findings of a damning report by the Office of the Children's Advocate into the CPFSA's relationship with founder of the U.S.-based charity Embracing Orphans, Carl Robonsky. Mr. Robonsky has been sanctioned in the U.S. for exchanging sexually inappropriate messages with a minor. Speaking in the House of Representatives yesterday, Education and Youth Minister Favour Williams said the Public Service Commission is deliberating the actions to be taken against Mrs. Gage-Gray. The minister said Mrs. Gage-Gray has been asked to step aside while the commission completes its deliberations. Minister Williams said she is outraged at some of the findings in the report, which suggested that children in the father's house were molested by the American. The minister accused the CEO of the CPFSA of disobeying instructions after she gave what she calls an unambiguous directive in March 2021 for the agency to immediately sever ties with Embracing Orphans and Robonsky when the claims of sexual misconduct surfaced. Minister Williams said the matter will be handed over to the police. The Ministry of Education and Youth terminated its relationship with Embracing Orphans after it was revealed that Robonsky had been charged with professional misconduct in the U.S. And public outrage over the ease with which suspected child predator Carl Robonsky was allowed to frolic with Jamaican state wards and allegedly making sexual advances has resurrected feelings of discomfort about the secrecy surrounding convicted felons archived under Jamaica's sex offenders registry. The registry, which was established in October 2009, and the passage of the Sexual Offences Act, only has records for felons who are tried and convicted for sex crimes in Jamaica. The database, which is managed by the Department of Correctional Services, is not open to public scrutiny, and all information in the register is secret and confidential. As it presently stands, data held by the registry is only accessible to individuals or groups who are deemed to have legitimate interests, such as the police, people engaged in professional counseling of sex offenders, people managing educational institutions where they are enrolled or seeking to be enrolled, people managing facilities that treat vulnerable individuals, and prospective employers and employees of sex offenders. According to Joy Crawford, co-founder of Eve for Life, which supports adolescent girls and young women who are survivors of physical and sexual abuse, the concerns over how Robonsky's past was not scrutinized seems almost hypocritical, given that Jamaicans are not able to eyeball their own sex offender registry. Based on the law, sex offenders who are convicted for a specified offense and not exempted are to be registered once the conviction is recorded in the Supreme Court by the registrar, the circuit court by the clerk of the circuit court, or the Court of Appeal. Offenders are kept on the register and are monitored for at least 10 years before they are eligible for termination of the registration and reporting requirements. Among the specified offenses are incest, rape, sexual touching or interference, sexual grooming of a child, sexual intercourse with a person under 16 years old, grievous sexual assault, and indecent assault. Up to August 2021, there were reportedly just over 330 registered sex offenders on the island. Responding to the defense that registered individuals are kept secret out of fear of vigilante justice, Ms. Crawford said, quote, "The registry, for me, is protecting perpetrators when it should be protecting victims and potential victims," end quote. Justice Minister Delroy Chuck has disclosed that the inability to serve summons on selected individuals is due to the shortage of jurors in the court system. The minister says in most cases, when jurors are selected from the voters' list, they are unable to be located for a number of reasons. He suggests that while the idea of using the tax registration number TRN can be used to help combat the issue, he's hoping that it can be resolved with the introduction of the National Identification System NIDS. In the meantime, opposition spokesperson on Information and Justice, Senator Donna Scott Motley, is calling on the minister to increase the stipend paid to jurors. She says increasing the stipend as well as improving public awareness on the importance of jury duty can aid in addressing the growing issue. The stipend for jurors, which was last increased in 2015, currently stands at $2,000 per day. The lack of jurors has resulted in the backlog of a number of cases in the courts across the island. A man was gunned down by unknown assailants while visiting his girlfriend at her home in Little Haiti, Negril in Westmoreland Tuesday night. The deceased has been identified as 43-year-old Gerald Browner of Red Ground, Negril in the parish. According to police reports, Browner was at his girlfriend's home when she went outside to speak to her mother, who occupies a room at the rear of the apartment. Shortly after, his girlfriend reportedly heard loud explosions sounding like gunshots coming from the room that Browner was in. When the shooting subsided, the report says she went inside to make checks and saw Browner lying on his back inside the room, suffering from what appeared to be multiple gunshot wounds to his head and upper body. The police were summoned and he was transported to the Savannah Lamar Public General Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Investigations are ongoing. Murder-accused music producer Jareem Jaman Shelton, who is a known associate of dancehall artist Squash, will return to court on February 15 for a hearing conference as he faces 2 charges of first-degree murder in the United States. Shelton is being held on a no-bond hold in relation to the double homicide. Shelton was held and charged on October 25 after forensic and video evidence allegedly placed him at the crime scene of a double murder. Shelton was identified as investigators allegedly matched his blood to 3 samples retrieved from the crime scene. According to the arrest affidavit filed in the Circuit Court of the 17th Judicial Court for Broward County, Florida, the men he is accused of killing have been identified as freelance hitman called Dwayne Muscleman Francis and Jeff Ford Lord Murray, who are well-known personalities in the Lauderhill community in South Florida. Both victims sustained multiple gunshot wounds to the head and the face. The shooting was captured on surveillance cameras. The police revealed that just after 9 p.m. on October 19, 2022, the Lauderhill Police Department responded to 5821 Blueberry Court regarding a shooting. Officers arrived on the scene and encountered 2 adult males suffering from apparent gunshot wounds in the parking lot area. The males were pronounced dead at the scene. Witness accounts indicate that there were other people involved in the shooting who had fled the scene in a vehicle before the arrival of the police. The court documents state that all of the shots came from the 4 individuals in the black sedan, as the victims had been ambushed and unable to fire a shot to defend themselves. A black sedan matching the description of the car from the crime scene then dropped off a light-skinned individual wearing the same tight-fitted blue jeans at the HCA Florida Woodmont Hospital approximately 6 miles away. The light-skinned individual was admitted in critical condition. Officers attempted to identify him via local database fingerprints, but to no avail. This male was later identified by the Border Patrol fingerprint scanner as Jareem Shelton. The arrest affidavit states, quote, Jareem Shelton is a Jamaican national citizen who entered the country illegally but is on parole status until he sees a judge about his status, end quote. The government is casting blame on the opposition for holding up the start of the process to ditch the constitutional monarchy and move Jamaica to republic status. Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs Marlene Malahoo Fort says the planned announcement of the membership of the High-Level Committee on Constitutional Reform by Prime Minister Andrew Holness had to be postponed due to opposition leader Mark Golding's delay in naming his side's two appointees to the body. In a statement to the House of Representatives, she signaled that the government is ready to go ahead with discussions towards doing away with the constitutional monarchy and making Jamaica a republic with or without the participation of the parliamentary opposition. Responding to Malahoo Fort's expressions of disappointment, Golding emphasized the opposition's concerns about a piecemeal approach to the reform. He is insisting on a formal and transparent response from the minister on the aspects of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms that the government has indicated it will amend. The opposition leader also re-emphasized his party's concerns about the Privy Council remaining as Jamaica's final court of appeal. Outlining details of the committee's term of reference, Malahoo Fort advised that the government intends to have a referendum early next year on the establishment of a republic and all deeply entrenched provisions of the Constitution. Draft regulations for the planned National Identification System (NIDS) have been tabled in the House of Representatives. Minister with responsibility, Floyd Green, says this will allow for feedback to be provided before the debate commences. The system, designed to provide a reliable database of all Jamaican citizens with the issuance of a unique lifelong national identification number to every person, is set to be piloted in select areas. The minister says the regulations will provide the framework and rules governing the program. The regulations will also ensure the security of the information collected on Jamaicans. The Western Regional Health Authority, WRHA, says it has expanded its fleet of emergency vehicles to 18 to serve Western Jamaica. The WRHA provides healthcare in the Western region through its 4 hospitals and 84 health centers across St. James, Westmoreland, Hanover, and Trelawney. On Friday, the authority received 4 new ambulances valued at $48 million. Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says the region needs 30 ambulances to adequately respond to medical emergencies. He says 5 additional ambulances are expected to arrive in March. Dr. Tufton also notes that admissions from motor vehicle crashes continue to remain a big issue for the facilities. And Tourism Minister Ed Bartlett says the country's tourism sector is experiencing an explosion of visitor arrivals since the reopening of the economy following the COVID-19 lockdowns. Mr. Bartlett says the economy has collected billions of dollars in revenue over the last year, despite instability in the global market. For the winter tourist season, he notes that Jamaica has started, quote, with a bang, end quote, as January figures show a 463% increase over last year and a 29% increase over 2019. Minister Bartlett says Jamaica ended 2022 equaling the record-breaking tourism earnings of $3.64 billion, and earnings for the fiscal year should amount to $4.2 billion, $500 million more than 2019, which was Jamaica's best year. The minister adds that there are plans to change the employment arrangement for tourism workers, including expanding participation in the pension scheme. Boasting that Jamaica's pension scheme is the only one in the world to include every segment of tourism, Mr. Bartlett states that the scheme currently has a membership of almost 8,000 workers with contributions amounting to $350 million. He says the target is to increase the membership to 10,000 within this winter season and to eventually have 350,000 workers enrolled in the pension scheme. In business news, the World Bank has warned that the global economy will come perilously close to a recession this year, led by weaker growth in all the world's top economies, the United States, Europe, and China. In an annual report, the World Bank, which lends money to poorer countries for development projects, says it had slashed its forecast for global growth this year by nearly half to just 1.7% from its previous projection of 3%. If that forecast proves accurate, it would be the third weakest annual expansion in 3 decades, behind only the deep recessions that resulted from the 2008 global financial crisis and the novel coronavirus pandemic in 2020. The World Bank report also notes that rising interest rates in developed economies like the United States and Europe will attract investment capital from poorer countries, thereby depriving them of crucial domestic investment. At the same time, the report says those high interest rates will slow growth in developed countries at a time when Russia's invasion of Ukraine has kept world food prices on a high. In the region, Colombia's vice president said yesterday that her security team found more than 7 kilos of explosives buried next to a rural road that leads to her home in the southwestern province of Cauca. She describes the incident as an assassination attempt. Francia Marquez shared a police report on her Twitter account, which says a drug-sniffing dog alerted to the bomb, which was made of ammonium nitrate, powdered aluminum, and shrapnel, and that anti-explosive officers blew it up in a controlled explosion on Monday. The vice president, who has previously faced death threats, described it as a new assassination attempt that won't stop her advocacy for peace and equality. Marquez is Colombia's first black vice president. She was elected last September along with President Gustavo Petro, an economist and former guerrilla fighter who is attempting to raise taxes on the wealthy, increase government spending, and start peace talks with the nation's remaining rebel groups. Before she entered politics, Marquez led protests against mining companies and illegal miners operating in Cauca and was forced to leave her home village of Suarez due to death threats. And on the international scene, the Chinese government suspended issuing tourist and business visas yesterday for South Koreans and reportedly for Japanese in an apparent retaliation for COVID-19 testing requirements imposed by those countries on travelers from China. The Chinese embassy in Seoul, in a brief notice on its WeChat social media account, said the ban would continue until South Korea lifts its discriminatory entry measures against China. Japan's Kyodo News Service said the ban would also affect Japanese travelers, though there was no similar announcement from China. China's foreign ministry threatened countermeasures last week against countries that had announced new virus testing requirements for travelers from China. At least 10 in Europe, North America, and Asia have done so recently, with officials expressing concern about a lack of information about rapidly spreading virus outbreaks in China. The Chinese announcement in South Korea appeared to apply to only new applicants and said nothing about South Koreans currently holding visas. The World Health Organization, WHO, and several nations have accused China of withholding data on its outbreak. A WHO official said yesterday that the agency sees no immediate threat for the European region from China's outbreak, but that more information is needed. And finally, in sports, the Jamaica Football Federation, JFF, has put on hold its plans to start a Jamaica Women's Premier League Tier 2 competition early this year. General Secretary of the JFF, Dennis Chung, says the primary aim is to stabilize the women's domestic game first, and that they have encountered a number of issues with the Tier 1 competition, which returned in November after a 3-year hiatus. As a result, they have decided to push back the start of a second-tier female league until later in the year. He admitted that the teething pains with the Tier 1 league were to be expected. However, the response for participation in the second-tier competition has not been what was expected because of various issues impacting the women's game locally. He highlights the fact that many women work full-time and that there is not a broad-based pool of women playing football like there is with men. And that's it for your news roundup for today. I'm Abigail Smythe. See you next time.